focus on keywords, and these are the most important words within the question. Now, our keywords are 80 to 90% of the time going to be nouns or noun phrases. These are people, places, and things. Then we may add a verb, adjective, or adverb when they have a lot of meaning, when they are important to understand the sentence. So let's automatically underline the keywords in these three questions. Can you just take a moment and look at the words that we have underlined? Now let's begin to understand paraphrase. In listening part 4, the words that we can see here in the question, if we look at question number 1, just, Asian countries, apart from, we will not hear these same words in the recording. Let me just repeat that because it's very important. These words in the question are not the words we will hear when we are listening. The listening is going to paraphrase this information. And this is testing your ability to understand paraphrase. Do you know just a few words in English, or do you know many, many different words? Can you understand if this is paraphrase? So we're going to have a little bit of help today in understanding the paraphrase that is going to be used. I've added some words at the bottom of the screen, and we're going to be matching these words to the underlined keywords. So let's start with number 1, which is popularization. If you look at our underlined keywords, what is the same meaning as popularization? Popularization is a paraphrase of what keywords? And there are actually 3 keywords that this paraphrases. 3 words. All right, so those 3 words are making more famous. Let's go to number 2, gave lectures. What is the same meaning, or what is paraphrase of gave lectures? All right, that is talked at university. Number 3, save for. Save for. What does that paraphrase? It's not a handful. It's not a handful. Okay, the paraphrase of that, a little bit more difficult, but is apart from. Another paraphrase would be except for. Let's go to number 4, set up. Set up. What does that mean? What is a paraphrase? Okay, that is founded. Number 5, travelers. Okay, travelers are tourists. Number 6, a few. Okay, a few is a handful. Number 7, went back home. Okay, this is a paraphrase for returned to their countries. Number 8, exclusively. Exclusively. Okay, that is just. Number 9, India, Thailand, and Japan. Okay, this is actually an example of some Asian countries. Very good. So, what we have done here is to realize that the words that we read in the question may be different words than the words that we hear in the recording. Now, at this point, you may notice that there are two keywords that we did not match. And let's think about why. The first one, John Kabat-Zinn, is a name, person's name, and there is no way to paraphrase the name of a person. That means we will probably hear that same exact word in the recording. Secondly, mindfulness is a word that in the English language does not have a synonym. We don't have another word with exactly the same meaning. In this case, we would expect that we will also hear mindfulness exactly the same in the recording. Now, we have done two things so far as we are preparing to listen. We found the key words in the question. That's the first thing. And the second thing is we thought about paraphrase. What are other words that I may hear in the recording? And we're going to do one more thing before we listen and find answers. We're going to answer this question down here at the bottom. What type of word or words do you think could go in the gaps? So the gaps are the blank spaces. So we want to think about verbs, nouns, adjectives, adverbs. Let's look at number 1. What type of word will number 1 be based on grammar? And we can make a very accurate prediction. Okay, it will be a noun. And we know it will be a noun because a handful is a quantifier. It's telling us how many of a thing, a noun. Let's go to number 2. What will number 2 be? Think about founded and set up. What will come after that? Okay, very good. It will also be a noun, a thing. We set up or we found something. So it will be a noun. Now let's go on to number 3 and be very careful with number 3. Number 3 is quite difficult. Something that helps us with number 3 is remembering that we are answering about the past. The past. There is only one type of word that could give us information in this sentence about the past. All right. The correct answer here is a verb. A verb. And it will probably be some type of verb phrase because we also have the word is. Now, many people in number 3 think about an adjective or an adverb, but that is not possible because if we use an adjective or an adverb, we would have a sentence with a present meaning. If we think about the word happy as an adjective, John Kabat-Zinn is happy making mindfulness more famous. That would be now. So that would be happening right now. And that's not possible because this is in the past. If we use an adverb, happily, John Kabat-Zinn is happily making mindfulness more famous. That would also be now. So the only thing that will give us past meaning is a verb. So number 1 is a noun. Number 2 is a noun. Number 3 is a verb. We are now ready to listen to the recording. Let's just make sure that we check our instructions. Can you please read those? And this tells us how many words we can write. So, with these instructions, we could write one word. We could write two words. We could write a number. We could write a number and one word, or we could write a number and two words. If you wrote three words, or if you wrote two numbers, your answer is automatically wrong. So we need to follow these instructions, okay? One word or two words, and there may be a number also. So we are now ready to listen and to find our answers. I'd like you, wherever you are now, if you have a pencil and paper or a pen, or if you can make some notes on your computer or on your phone, because as we listen to the recording, I would like you to write down the answers that you find. So just like the real IELTS exam, I want you to listen and I want you to make a note of your personal answer. I'm going to get our recording ready. If you can just give me a moment, and then we will listen. All right. As we are listening to the recording, please do not put answers in the chat window. Don't put answers in the chat window. When we are finished, then I will ask you to share answers one by one. But before that, please don't share your answers in the chat window. All right, let's begin listening and let's find these answers for number one, number two, and number three.
This practice was for thousands of years exclusively an Eastern idea, really up until the late 60s, early 70s, save for a few early Western adventurers that went out to places like India, Thailand, or Japan to seek out other forms of knowledge. It was these travelers who then came back home and gave lectures at universities or set up meditation centers that sowed the first seeds of mindfulness on Western soils. However, the person most often credited with the popularization of mindfulness in America is one John Kabat-Zinn. In 1979, Kabat-Zinn founded the Stress Reduction Clinic out of Massachusetts University, and it was there that he developed his mindfulness-based stress reduction course, or MBSR.
Okay, we have heard all of the answers now, and let's begin to check them. Starting with only number one. What was your answer in number one? Knowledge is not possible. That cannot be the answer because we have a quantifier in a handful. All right. We do have a few correct answers, but the majority of the answers are not correct that are being shared. Let's leave number one and let's go on to number two. What was your answer in number two? Okay, much better in number two. We have quite a few correct answers. It is meditation centers. Meditation centers. Let's go on to number 3. What was number 3? Okay. Again, there are very few correct answers. What we're going to do, because we are practicing today, we are going to listen again to the recording. Now, this never happens in the real listening exam. You always, always, always listen one time. However, because we're practicing, let's try this again. Okay, we want to focus on number 1 and number 3. And let's find out what were those answers. Let's listen again.
This practice was for thousands of years exclusively an Eastern idea, really up until the late 60s, early 70s, save for a few early Western adventurers that went out to places like India, Thailand, or Japan, seek out other forms of knowledge. It was these travelers who then came back home and gave lectures at universities or set up meditation centers that sowed the first seeds of mindfulness on Western soils. However, the person most often credited with the popularization of mindfulness in America is one John Kabat-Zinn. In 1979, Kabat-Zinn founded the Stress Reduction Clinic out of Massachusetts University, and it was there that he developed his mindfulness-based stress reduction course, or MBSR.
Okay, let's go back to number 1 and let's try that one again. What was the answer in number 1? Please share it with us. All right, we did better this time. The answer is Western adventurers. Western adventurers. And let's go on to number 3. What was number 3? Okay, better this time also. The answer in number 3 is credited with. Credited with. And we're going to be looking now at a portion of the script to help us identify where the correct answer was. So looking down here at the bottom, these are the words that we just listened to, and focusing on question number 1. It said this practice was for thousands of years exclusively an Eastern idea, really up until the late 60s, early 70s, save for a few early Western adventurers. And please check your spelling. Your spelling needs to be completely correct, or your answer is wrong. So even if one letter, for example, if you are missing the S, your answer is wrong in the IELTS exam. Let's go on to number 2, and we had done better with this one. The answer in number 2, it was these travelers who then came back home and gave lectures at university or set up meditation centers. Now, at the end of this word, centers, this is the British spelling, which is correct. You may also use the American spelling, and that is also correct in the IELTS exam. And the American spelling would be T-E-R-S. Both are correct, but you must have the S at the end. And finally, going on to number 3, the answer. However, the person most often credited with the popularization of mindfulness in America is one John Kabat-Zinn. So, as we can see, listening part 4 is quite difficult. We need to be prepared, we need to listen and understand paraphrase so we can get answers correct. We're going to pause for just a moment. If you have any questions, you can ask me in the chat window. Yes, credited for is wrong. That's not what we heard. We heard credited with. Yes, Matilda, it is 0 points. 0. Capital letters are not necessary. In the listening exam, you can have capital or small. Both are correct, but they're not important. You usually have about 30 seconds to look at the questions. No, Mohammed, mock tests are the same as the real exam. Riman, you follow the speaker accurately by practicing. There is no pass and fail in the IELTS exam. You only get a score of your English ability. Yes, Mohammed, you can have all capital, all small. You can have some capital, some small. It doesn't matter. Matilda, in that case, probably you were only allowed to write one word. That's usually the issue with things like that. No, John, they do not provide the listening passage written. Of course not. It would not be a listening test then. Busra, honestly, you probably cannot improve your listening in 1 week. To improve listening takes time. 1 month, 6 months, a year. Listening takes time to improve. It's not fast. No, Marcy, no spell checker. Of course not. In the computer-based exam, there is no extra time to transfer answers. In the paper-based exam, there is 10 minutes to transfer answers. Farah, normally you never need a, an, or the. You don't need those words. Hamad, if you studied hard, if you had good teachers, if you did your homework, then probably you can get a 5.5. But it depends on many things. All right, we're going to move on to the second part of the class. We have many of you that are spamming the chat with your questions 5 times, 10 times. Please don't do that, okay? Send your question once, and I will answer that. If you continue to spam the chat with the same question many times, I will remove you from the class. That makes it very hard for me as the teacher to find questions and answer them well, and it stops your fellow students from asking their questions. Let's continue on to part 2 of the class, and we're going to be learning about discourse markers here. The listening part 4 is always one person speaking. And so we're going to understand how this one person speaking is going to be using discourse markers. And then why does this help us to answer questions correctly? Let's first find out about what a discourse marker is. Now, a discourse marker is simply a linking word. They're the same thing. Linking word, discourse marker, same thing. Very basic ones. And, but, so, or. Those are very simple discourse markers. So let's look at some discourse markers that can be used in part 4, the listening exam. And as we are looking at these, we want to think about the purpose of discourse markers. The purpose is to tell the reader if this is something that we're writing, or the listener if it is something that we are speaking. These are to help the person who is reading or listening to us understand what information is going to come next. For example, if we say the word and, the speaker knows we're going to add additional information. If we say but, the person listening knows that we're going to be usually talking about an opposite thing. If we say or, the person listening knows we're going to talk about two options of something. So let's look at some other more advanced discourse markers. The first one that we're going to look at is the word anyway. This is a discourse marker very commonly used by native speakers when they are going to change the subject that they are talking about. In this example, so that's why I couldn't go to the party. Anyway, what are you doing tomorrow? So we are signaling, okay, the person listening to us anyway. And this means I'm changing subject. And this helps the person to prepare for that change. Number 2, mind you. This is a discourse marker also used by native speakers when they are going to add a negative aspect, a negative idea to something that they were talking about. In this example, I really enjoyed the food at the restaurant. Mind you, the service was terrible. So we are signaling our listener, I'm now going to talk about a bad thing, a negative thing. Lastly, a rhetorical question. And this is very common in listening part 4. So how do we solve this problem? Now, the speaker asks this question not because they want someone to answer it. They ask the question because they are going to begin introducing the solutions. So how do we solve this problem? Well, we need to do this thing and this thing and this thing. So they ask the question to prepare the listener for the answers to the question that they ask. So knowing a little bit now about discourse markers, we're going to begin understanding why these are super important in part 4. We're going to continue listening to some information about mindfulness. We're going to again do 3 note completion questions. And I'd like you to just take a moment very quickly, and can you just look through these notes? All right. Now, I mentioned a minute ago that listening part 4 is always one person speaking. One person. The situation where this listening is happening is usually an academic situation. For example, You're at university and you are listening to a professor give a lecture. And that is what's happening today in our listening. The woman speaking is giving an academic lecture. Another similar situation for part 4 could be some type of business or some type of professional presentation. This type of speaking is formal speaking. And when a person is speaking formally, the way that they speak is very similar to formal writing. So formal writing and formal speaking are often very similar. Now, let's think about formal writing. When we are reading on a piece of paper, we can see paragraphs of information. For example, in the reading exam. And we know that a paragraph is normally going to focus on one main topic. When there is a new paragraph, we know that there's going to be a change in the main piece of information. So a paragraph is a visual signal. It's something that we see that tells us there's going to be a change in the main idea that is being discussed. When we are listening, though, we cannot see paragraphs on a piece of paper. Instead, the speaker is going to use discourse markers to tell you that they are changing paragraph and changing the topic. Now let's look at our questions again here. If we were going to read this information, maybe in the reading exam, how many paragraphs do you think we would read to answer these questions? How many paragraphs would we probably read to answer these questions? Okay, very good. So probably 3 paragraphs. And the way that we can know that is we have 1, 2, 3 headings that are about a somewhat different topic. That means that as we are listening, the speaker will use a discourse marker to signal us that they are changing paragraph. And we're going to have a little bit of help today in the discourse markers that are going to be used. We are looking down here at the bottom for question number 1. We're going to identify the discourse marker that will tell us we are starting on this paragraph, psychological. And let's look at what this is. What type of discourse marker is that? What did we learn that this is called, this question? It's okay if your spelling is wrong. It's a difficult spelling. What is this? What do we call that question? Okay, this is the rhetorical question. The speaker is asking the question to tell us they are changing topic a little bit, and they are going to answer this question. Then, thinking about paraphrase, we are going to hear the word psychology, and that is in the word family of our heading, psychological. So what that means is after that, as we continue listening, we will hear the answer for number 1. Let's look at question number 2. And again, focus on the discourse marker down here. The discourse marker, another factor. This tells us the speaker is changing paragraph. They are going on to a new topic. Then we will hear society. And that is telling us a second signal as the listener, we are now on this heading about societal. This is telling us as we continue listening, we will hear the answer for number 2. And let's continue on to our final one, number 3. For our final question, we will hear a final contributing factor. This gives us two pieces of information. Number one, we're changing paragraph and topic. And number two, we are at the end of the information. This is the last paragraph. And then we will hear technology, which matches our heading in the word family, technological. And as we continue listening, we will hear the answer for number three. So we understand now discourse markers. Listening part 4 will use many, 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 many discourse markers because this is good formal speaking. Now, why is this so important? As we found a few minutes ago when we were practicing our listening part 4 can be very fast. We will hear answer, 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 answer. And when it is very fast, it is easy to become lost in the sequence. Are we at question number 1 or are we at number 3? Is it number 2? I don't know where I am. I'm lost. And then we miss answers. When we focus on discourse markers, and when we follow the discourse markers, this tells us, okay, now I'm on question number 1. I'm only focusing on number 1. Now I'm on number 2. Now I'm on number 3. I'm on the last question. When we focus, this helps us to follow the information and we will get many more answers correct. So, in just a minute, we're going to listen and we're going to answer these 3 questions. Now, before we do that, let's think about what we did in part 1. We read the question and found the keywords. That was the first thing. Second, we thought about paraphrase of those keywords. What are other words with the same meaning? And then number 3, we predicted a noun, a verb, an adjective, or an adverb. I would like you to do that now, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Don't share in the chat window. This is you alone. Read the question, keywords, paraphrase, prediction. You have 30 seconds. Okay, we're going to listen now, and we're going to answer these questions. We are only going to listen one time only. So follow those discourse markers, think about paraphrase, and let's get the answers the first time. Let's begin. Again, write down your answers as you listen, and do not share in the chat window until we finish. Let's begin.
So, where are we today? Well, despite its fairly slow beginnings, in recent years, mindfulness has seen a stratospheric rise in popularity. In fact, it is estimated that some 18 million Americans now have a regular meditation routine, and that 44% of US companies offer mindfulness training to their staff. But what has driven the surge in interest? Well, one factor is the development in fields such as clinical psychology and neuroscience. Scientists have been able to see exactly how stress, depression, and anxiety affect the brain and how mindfulness can be used to treat such conditions. Another factor, it could be argued, is our changing society and day to day lives. We are ever more living in a world where we are expected to work harder, where we have less time to ourselves, where job security is low and competition for new jobs is high, and where our senses are bombarded from all sides by technology. It's no wonder then that 44% of US citizens report that they feel more stressed today than they did 5 years ago. Final contributing factor is that of technology. In the past, if you wanted to attend a mindfulness course, you had to find somewhere that ran one, go there once a week, and possibly pay a hefty sum of money, whereas nowadays, you need only switch on your phone, tap on the menu button, navigate to the App Store, click download, and after waiting for the installation to complete, you have access to hundreds of guided mindfulness sessions.
Okay, let's start with number one. Could you please tell us the correct answer for number one? All right, great work. The answer is anxiety. Excellent, excellent. We have all correct answers. Let's go to number two. What is number two? Wow, very good. Again, nearly all correct answers. Job security, job security. And number three. Very good. Again, excellent. It is access to. And we're going to put those answers on the screen so that you can check your spelling. Remember that even if one letter is different, your answer is zero, completely wrong. So our spelling has to be correct. No, Hamza, no. All right, we're going to stop our class there for today. If you have questions about what we have learned, you can put those in the chat window for me. And as you are writing your questions, we had some people that were asking, where can I watch this class again? I'm going to show you now. Go to the IELTS Ready Premium website. Nearly all of you have free access. Go to the section here that says Guided Skills and click on Guided Skills. Choose the listening, that big box, and scroll down. And today is part 4 listening. Click on that topic, part 4 listening, and you're going to scroll down and you're looking here at the top, class. To watch the pre-recorded class, click Watch on Demand class. You can go through and review the things that we learned today, or if you missed part of it, you can go back and watch it there. And then after that are the connected training and practice activities. These are very, very important because they're going to help you to review what we learned and to practice what we learned so you can do these things yourself much better. All right, I'm going to begin answering your questions, and I'm also sending you some questions about your experience in the class, if you can answer those for us. Hala, read first and then answer the question. No, Lingani, that is a wrong answer. You don't need articles, usually, and you never need capital letters. Akintola, if you need to change your exam, you must contact your testing center. We have no connection to that. You need to contact the place where you will have your exam.